When most people think of Europe, they imagine nations like France, Italy, or Germany. With their long histories of kings, empires, and revolutions, few realize that Europe also has its own indigenous people, communities whose roots stretch back thousands of years, predating the formation of modern states. Among the most remarkable of these are the Sami people, often called the people of the north, who inhabit a vast region known as Sápmi. This territory, which transcends national borders, extends across Norway, Sweden, Finland, and the Kola Peninsula of Russia. The Sami are often portrayed as reindeer herders, wrapped in colorful clothing, guiding their animals across snowy tundra landscapes. While this image is not wrong, it represents only a fragment of their cultural and historical identity. To understand who the Sami are, one must look deeper into their ancient origins. Their close relationship with the land and the way they have survived in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Ancient origins, the Sami are widely regarded as one of the oldest continuous cultures in Europe. Archaeological evidence suggests that their ancestors have lived in northern Scandinavia for at least 5,000 to 10,000 years, following the retreat of the Ice Age glaciers. Some researchers even argue that elements of their culture may date back further, connecting them to some of the earliest hunter-gatherer communities in Europe. Linguistically, the Sami speak languages belonging to the Uralic family, which also includes Finnish, Estonian, and Hungarian. This sets them apart from their Scandinavian neighbors, whose languages belong to the Indo-European family. While scholars continue to debate the exact migration patterns that shape the Sami, what is clear is that they represent a unique strand of human history in Europe, distinct from the Norse, Germanic, and Slavic peoples around them. Genetic studies further reinforce this uniqueness. Research shows that the Sami carry DNA markers, linking them both to ancient Europeans and to populations farther east, such as Siberian groups. This genetic diversity reflects their long-standing adaptation to the northern environment as well. As centuries of interaction with surrounding peoples, while still maintaining a clear cultural identity of their own, the land of Sapmith Sami homeland, known as Sápmi, is not a country in the political sense but a cultural and ecological region. It covers roughly 150,000 square miles. Stretching from the Arctic Ocean in Norway to the northern forests of Finland, and from the coastlines of Sweden to Russia's Kola Peninsula. This landscape includes tundra, boreal forests, mountains, and river valleys, offering both challenges and resources for human life. For centuries, Sami adapted to these diverse environments with remarkable ingenuity. Along the Arctic coast, many Sami became skilled fishermen, relying on cod, salmon, and other fish as staples. In forested areas, hunting for elk, bears, and birds was common, along with gathering berries and plants. On the tundra, where other forms of subsistence were difficult, the Sami became renowned for reindeer herding, a practice that remains central to their identity today. What makes Sápmi so important to the Sami is not simply its geography, but its spiritual dimension. In their traditional worldview, every part of the land, rivers, mountains, animals, and even stones carried a spirit. To live in Sápmi was not merely to survive. It was to be part of an interconnected web of life, where humans and nature coexisted in balance. This perspective shaped their rituals, myths, and daily practices, embedding the land into the very fabric of Sami identity. Distinct appearance and identity, the Sami have long been distinguished not only by their language and culture, but also by their physical features and clothing. Historically, outsiders noted their shorter stature, lighter skin, and in some regions, distinct facial features that set them apart from neighboring populations. While such descriptions often came from outsiders with biased or colonial perspectives, they highlight how the Sami were seen as different within Northern Europe. Clothing, however, is a clearer marker of identity. The gákti, the traditional Sami dress, remains one of the most recognizable cultural symbols. It's typically made of wool or reindeer hide. The gákti is decorated with bright patterns of red, blue, green, and yellow, along with belts, silver buttons, and embroidered designs. Far from being mere fashion, the gákti often indicates a person's community, family background, and even marital status. This distinct appearance has historically made the Sámi both visible and vulnerable. On one hand, their unique identity fostered strong community pride. On the other, it made them targets of discrimination and assimilation policies, especially during the rise of modern nation-states. Yet despite centuries of pressure, the Sámi continued to wear their gákti proudly, particularly during festivals, reindeer gatherings, and political events. A people before borders, one of the most striking aspects of the Sámi is that their homeland predates the modern borders that now divide it. Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia each lay claim to parts of Sápmi, but the Sámi existed there long before these states emerged. This means that the Sámi see themselves not as belonging exclusively to one country, but to a larger cultural territory that transcends national divisions. This sense of identity beyond borders has created challenges and opportunities. On the one hand, it has complicated their political recognition, as no single state claims full responsibility for them. On the other, it has fostered international cooperation among Sámi communities who now work across borders to preserve their language, traditions, political voice. Conclusion: the origins and homeland of the Sámi people tell a story of resilience, adaptation, and cultural continuity in one of the world's harshest environments. They are not relics of the past, but a living people, rooted in traditions that stretch back thousands of years while continuing to adapt to the modern world. By understanding their deep connection to Sápmi, to the tundra, forests, rivers, and mountains, we begin to see the Sámi not only as an indigenous people of Europe, but as a reminder of humanity's broader relationship with the land. In their origins lies a message. Survival is not about conquering nature, but about living with it. A lesson as relevant today as it was when the first Sámi hunters followed reindeer across the Arctic plains to truly understand the Sámi. It is not enough to trace their ancient origins or outline the boundaries of Sápmi. What gives the Sámi identity its richness is the rhythm of daily life, the customs passed down through generations, and the traditions that continue to shape their sense of community. The Sámi are not simply a people of the past, preserved in museum displays. They are a living culture whose practices, from reindeer herding and fishing to clothing, music and social organization, continue to adapt while holding deep connections. Two ancient roots: reindeer herding, a way of life. When most people think of the Sámi, the image that first comes to mind is reindeer herding. Indeed, reindeer are at the heart of Sámi culture. While not all Sámi are herders, in fact, only about 10% are actively involved in herding today. The animal holds immense symbolic and practical importance. Traditionally, reindeer provided the Sámi with almost everything they needed: food from the meat, clothing and shelter from the hides, tools from the bones and antlers, and transportation from the animals themselves. In the winter months, reindeer-pulled sledges were essential for navigating the snowy landscapes of Sápmi. Long before modern snowmobiles appeared, herding itself is not a solitary endeavor, but a community activity, often involving extended families. The movement of the herds follows the seasons. In the summer, they graze in mountain pastures, while in winter they move toward the forests where food is more accessible. This migration creates a cyclical rhythm of life, binding families to the land in ways that mirror the natural world. Even today, in the face of modern pressures such as land loss, industrial development, and climate change, reindeer herding remains a cornerstone of Sámi's identity. It is both a livelihood and a cultural symbol, embodying the values of independence, resilience, and respect for nature. Fishing, hunting, and gathering. While reindeer herding is iconic, it is not the only traditional livelihood. Along the coasts of Norway and the rivers of Finland, fishing has been central to Sámi's survival. Salmon, trout, cod, and other fish have long provided nourishment. And fishing rights remain a sensitive political issue today as governments and commercial industries compete with local Sami communities for access to resources in forested regions. Sami families historically relied on hunting and gathering. Birds, elk, and smaller game were hunted, while berries and wild plants provided essential vitamins, particularly during the long Arctic winters. These practices reveal a people deeply attuned to seasonal cycles, capable of making use of every available resource without waste. Clothing. The symbolism of the gákti. Among the most visible aspects of Sami tradition is their clothing. The gákti, the traditional Sami garment, is not simply attire, but a statement of identity, typically crafted from wool or reindeer hide. The gákti is adorned with vivid colors, blue, red, green, and yellow, arranged in distinctive patterns. Each gákti can signal where a person comes from, which family they belong to, and sometimes even whether they are single or married. The belts, buckles, and silver jewelry worn with the gákti also carry cultural meaning, often passed down as heirlooms from one generation to another in daily life. The gákti is worn during important events such as weddings, festivals, and political gatherings. In the past, it was practical clothing designed to withstand harsh Arctic conditions. Today, it stands as a symbol of pride, resilience, and cultural visibility in a world that once sought to erase Sami identity through assimilation. Music and oral traditions. The power of the Joik reindeer herding is the physical backbone of Sami life, then music and oral tradition form its spiritual soul. The most iconic form of Sami music is the Joik, a haunting, rhythmic style of singing that is unlike anything else in Europe. A Joik is not merely a song, but a way of evoking a person, place, or animal. Rather than describing someone or something, a Joik attempts to embody their very essence through sound. Traditionally, Joiks were performed without instruments, though modern musicians often incorporate drums, guitars, or electronic elements. Despite centuries of suppression by Christian missionaries who considered Joiks pagan and banned them, the tradition has survived and even flourished in recent decades. Today, Sami artists such as Mari Boyne and John Henrik Fulgren have brought Joik to international audiences. Blending it with contemporary music while preserving its deep cultural roots, storytelling, too, plays a vital role. Through myths, legends, and oral histories, the Sami have preserved knowledge about their ancestors, the natural world, and the spirits that inhabit it. These stories were traditionally passed down around the fire during long winter nights, shaping both memory and identity. Social organization and community life. The Sami traditionally lived in small, family-based groups, often organized around herding or fishing. Decisions were made communally, reflecting the values of cooperation and balance with nature. In many ways, the social structure mirrored the environment itself, flexible, adaptive, and resilient, even as modernization has brought new ways of living. These communal values endure. Festivals, gatherings, and political assemblies, such as the annual Sami parliament meetings in Norway, Sweden, and Finland, serve not only administrative purposes, but also reinforce the sense of belonging to a shared heritage that transcends borders, balancing tradition and modernity. One of the most striking aspects of Sami life today is the balance between tradition and modernity. Many Sami work in contemporary professions, live in cities, and engage with the wider world. Yet they continue to preserve their cultural practices through language, clothing, music, and seasonal herding. Snowmobiles may now replace sledges, and smartphones may connect herders across the tundra, but the essence of Sami traditions remains. What changes is not the identity itself, but the way it is expressed in a world that demands adaptation. Conclusion: the daily life and traditions of the Sami are more than mere survival strategies in a harsh climate. They are expressions of a worldview that values harmony, resilience, and continuity, whether through the movement of reindeer, the melody of a Joik, or the patterns of a gákti. The Sami remind us that tradition is not static. It evolves, just as their people have evolved, ensuring that the wisdom of the past remains alive in the present. Their story shows that cultural survival does not mean resisting change, but rather adapting to it while holding firmly to the roots that define identity. In this way, The Saami continue to embody one of Europe's most enduring indigenous legacies. If daily life reflects how the Saami adapt to the environment, their spiritual worldview reveals how they understand their place within it. For the Saami, spirituality has never been confined to churches, temples, or written scriptures. Instead, it is woven into the very fabric of nature: the tundra, the forests, the rivers, and the reindeer herds. At the heart of Saami belief lies a deep respect for the interconnectedness of all life and the conviction that every element of the natural world possesses spirit and meaning. Animism, a world alive with spirit. Traditional Saami spirituality is animistic, meaning that the world is seen as alive, infused with spiritual presence. Mountains, rivers, lakes, animals, even stones could all hold spirits or forces of power. This worldview cultivated a profound sense of balance and respect. Humans were not masters of the environment, but partners in a delicate relationship. For example, when hunting reindeer or fishing, offerings were often made to ensure that the spirits of the animals and waters were respected. Certain locations, such as striking rock formations or ancient trees, were considered sacred sites, places where the spiritual and physical worlds intersected. These sacred places, often called saidi, were used for rituals, sacrifices, and gatherings. To the Saami, the land was not an empty wilderness to be conquered, but a living entity to be honored. The role of the Noati, shaman central to Saami spiritual life, was the Noati, or shaman. The Noati acted as an intermediary between the human and spirit worlds, using rituals, chants, and the iconic shamanic drum to enter trance states. Through these practices, the Noati sought guidance, healing, or knowledge from the spirits. The drum itself was more than a musical instrument. It's covered in reindeer hide and painted with symbolic designs. It represented the cosmos, the natural world, and the invisible forces shaping life. By striking the drum rhythmically and singing joiks, the Noati could enter altered states of consciousness. Traveling spiritually to seek answers or communicate with ancestral powers, healing was also a central function of the Noati. Illness was often understood not only as a physical problem, but also as a disruption in spiritual harmony. The Noati would attempt to restore balance, drawing on both practical knowledge of plants and rituals to invoke spiritual aid. The pantheon of Saami deities, the Saami spiritual system, did not revolve around a single god, but included a pantheon of deities, each linked to elements of nature and life. Among the most important were Radian, or Radianadaj, a high god associated with order in the cosmos. Taraka, a mother goddess connected with fertility and childbirth, believed to protect families. Baifa, the sun deity, vital for life in the Arctic. The return of the sun, after long winter darkness, was celebrated with rituals honoring Bihavi. Horgals, the thunder god, protector against evil forces. Jabmiaka, a goddess of the underworld, ruled over the spirits of the dead. Through these deities, Saami sought to explain and navigate the cycles of nature, from the migration of animals to the change of seasons. Rituals and offerings were made to honor these powers, ensuring survival and harmony in a world that could be both generous and unforgiving. Joik is spiritual practice. While joy is often described as a musical tradition, it is also deeply spiritual. A joik is not merely sung for entertainment. It is a way of evoking the spirit of a person, animal, or place. In this sense, it acts as a form of prayer or invocation, blurring the lines between music, memory, and spirituality. Some joiks were performed in ceremonies led by Noati, while others were personal, intimate expressions of connection to the world. In both forms, the joik carried a power that missionaries later tried to suppress, seeing it as pagan worship. Yet its survival in the modern era speaks to its resilience as a spiritual and cultural force. Christianity and suppression. With the arrival of Christianity in Northern Europe, particularly from the Middle Ages onward, Saami spirituality came under intense pressure. Missionaries from Norway, Sweden, and Finland sought to convert the Saami, often by force. Nawadi were persecuted, their drums burned, and sacred sites destroyed or repurposed as Christian churches. The Joik was condemned as devilish, and many Sami were compelled to abandon their rituals in favor of church teachings. Some were even executed during witch trials for practicing shamanic traditions. This religious colonization left deep scars, contributing to the decline of traditional practices. Yet, despite centuries of suppression, elements of Sami spirituality never disappeared entirely. Sacred places continued to be quietly respected, and knowledge of the old ways was passed down discreetly within families. Spirituality in the modern world today, Sami spirituality, is experiencing a revival. While many Sami identify as Christian, a growing number are rediscovering and embracing their traditional beliefs. Sacred sites are being protected. Joik is celebrated, and the Nawadi drum has reappeared in cultural ceremonies. Modern Sami spirituality often blends Christianity with ancient traditions, creating a unique spiritual identity. For example, as Sami, a person may attend church while also participating in rituals honoring the land and seasons. This blending reflects not compromise, but resilience, the ability to preserve cultural roots even in the face of centuries of external pressure. Conclusion: the belief systems of the Sami reveal a worldview both ancient and enduring, one that places harmony with nature at its core. Through animism, the role of the Nawadi, the reverence for deities like Biavi and Madaraka, and the practice of Joik, the Sami constructed a spiritual universe that guided daily life and preserved community identity, even after centuries of missionary suppression. This worldview has survived, adapting to modern contexts while retaining its essence. For the Sami, spirituality is not a distant ritual, but a living practice, reminding us that the sacred is not found only in temples or books, but in the rivers, mountains, and reindeer that shape the rhythms of existence. Every culture weaves stories to explain the mysteries of existence, and for the Sami, mythology has long been a vital vessel of identity. In the long Arctic nights, when the sun vanished for weeks or even months, storytelling around the fire was not simply entertainment, it was survival, a way of carrying knowledge, values, and spiritual truths across generations. Sami legends do not read like distant myths locked in old manuscripts. They remain living narratives, shaping how the Sami view themselves and their place in the universe. The sun goddess Beavumong, the most important figures in Sami mythology, is Beavu, the sun goddess. To the Sami, the sun is not merely a celestial object, but the giver of life. Her warmth makes the land fertile, allowing reindeer to graze, plants to grow, people to endure after the harsh polar winters. In traditional stories, Bifavi is often depicted as traveling across the sky with her daughter, sometimes in a sled pulled by reindeer. During the long winter darkness, Sami people would pray to Bivi for her return, offering butter as a symbolic act of nourishing the sun and helping her regain strength. The annual Bivi festival at the winter solstice was one of the most significant celebrations. Reindeer antlers were tied together in circles to represent the sun, and sacrifices were made to ensure the goddess would bring fertility and light once again. This reverence for Bafa illustrates how myth and the rhythms of nature were intertwined in Sami life. Madaraka and the spirit mothers. Another central figure is Mataraka, the great mother goddess associated with fertility, protection. In the household, she had 3 daughters, each responsible for guiding aspects of human life. Saraka, guardian of fertility and childbirth, often invoked by women. Yakasaka, protector of children, especially newborns. Eksaka, spirit who determined the sex of the child before birth. Together, these spirit mothers symbolize the continuity of life and the deep respect for family and kinship in Sami culture. Women would call upon them during childbirth, and offerings were made to ensure safe deliveries. These myths not only provided spiritual comfort, but also reinforced the vital roles of women within Sami society. The underworld in Jadme Hakath, Sami cosmos was not limited to the earthly realm. It also included an underworld ruled by Jabmeaka, the goddess of the dead. According to tradition, the spirits of the deceased lived in her domain, a mirror of the living world. To honor the dead, families would make offerings at sacred sites, maintaining bonds with ancestors and acknowledging that life and death were part of a continuous cycle. In some tales, the Nawadi, the shaman, could journey to Jabmiaka, realm during trance states, seeking wisdom from the spirits of the ancestors. This belief underscores the Sami view of death not as an end, but as a transformation within the greater web of existence. Nature, spirits, and sacred places beyond deities. Sami mythology is rich with stories of spirits inhabiting the natural world. Lakes, rivers, mountains, and even boulders could be sacred, home to beings who demanded respect. One striking example is the reverence for Sati, sacred stones or rock formations often used for sacrifices. Hunters would leave offerings of meat, fish, or antlers to ensure success and safety. These stories reinforced a culture of reciprocity with nature. Take what you need, but always give something back. There are also tales of forest spirits and water beings who could help or harm humans depending on how they were treated. Such stories carried practical lessons, teaching people to live respectfully and cautiously in an environment where survival often depended on maintaining harmony with the land. Trickster figures in folklore. Not all Saami myths were solemn. Like many cultures, they had trickster figures, beings who could deceive, play pranks, or test human character. These tales served as cautionary stories, reminding listeners of the importance of humility, honesty, and wisdom. One recurring theme in Saami folklore is the danger of arrogance toward nature. Hunters or herders who acted greedily or disrespectfully often faced supernatural consequences: storms, failed hunts, or illness. In this way, mythology acted as both entertainment and moral education. Mythology and the Northern Lights, the aurora borealis, or Northern Lights, occupy a special place in Saami mythology. To many Saami, the lights were considered powerful spirits dancing across the sky. Some traditions warned against drawing too much attention to them, whistling or mocking. The lights could invite danger. Others believed the lights carried the souls of the departed or were manifestations of divine energy. These beliefs reflect the awe and mystery the Northern Lights continue to inspire today, showing how natural phenomena were integrated into spiritual and mythological frameworks. Suppression and survival of Saami mythology, like Saami spirituality more broadly, mythology faced suppression during Christianization. Missionaries sought to replace Saami legends with biblical stories, condemning old myths as pagan superstition. Sacred sites were destroyed and traditional rituals forbidden, yet the stories persisted. Families continued to pass them down orally, embedding them into daily life. In modern times, scholars and Saami cultural activists have worked to record and preserve these tales, ensuring they remain part of the collective memory. Today, Saami myths inspire art, literature, and even contemporary films, bringing ancient legends into dialogue with the modern world. Conclusions: Saami legends and mythology are more than folklore. They are cultural blueprints, offering insight into how the Saami understood life, death, nature, and community. Figures like Baivi Madaraka and Jabmiaka embody the cycles of light, fertility, and death, while stories of spirits, city, and the Northern Lights root spiritual meaning directly in the landscape. These myths reveal a people whose worldview was never abstract but profoundly grounded in the environment around them. They continue to echo today, reminding us of the Saami belief that the world is alive, interconnected, and deserving of respect. In preserving these stories, the Saami not only honor their past, but also offer timeless wisdom about living in balance with the natural world. The history of the Saami people cannot be told without examining their encounters with outsiders, settlers, traders, missionaries, and eventually the rising nation-states of Northern Europe. For centuries, the Saami lived relatively undisturbed. Across the vast landscapes of Sápmi, their communities were mobile, their livelihoods closely tied to seasonal cycles, and their worldview deeply rooted in the natural world. But as the political economic and religious forces of Europe expanded northward, the Sami found themselves drawn into systems not of their own making. What followed was a long struggle for survival, adaptation, and recognition. Early contact. Trade and exchange. The earliest encounters between Sami communities and outsiders were not immediately hostile. From as early as the Viking Age, 8th–11th centuries, Norse traders traveled north to exchange goods with the Sami. The Sami offered furs, hides, fish, and reindeer products, while receiving tools, weapons, grain, and cloth in return. Archaeological evidence suggests that Sami reindeer hides were highly prized across Europe, even reaching markets in England and the Baltic. These exchanges were mutually beneficial, but they also marked the beginning of dependency. Over time, Sami communities became linked to external economies, and their autonomy weakened as outsiders grew more interested in controlling the northern trade routes and resources. The spread of Christianity from the 12th century onward. Christian missionaries began arriving in Sápmi. At first, conversion efforts were sporadic, but by the 1600s they became systematic. Missionaries viewed Sami spirituality with its shamans, sacred drums, and reverence for nature as pagan and dangerous. The Noadi shamans were persecuted, their drums seized and burned. Sacred sites, such as Sites stones, were desecrated, and rituals suppressed. Sami people were compelled to attend church services and adopt Christian practices. Some were even tried for witchcraft, accused of consorting with spirits. Yet conversion was not always total. Many Sami outwardly practiced Christianity while secretly maintaining elements of their ancestral faith. This duality reflected their resilience. They found ways to preserve traditions even under intense religious pressure. Colonization of the North As European states consolidated power. The Sami lands became increasingly valuable. Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia all sought to expand their borders into Sápmi. Drawn by its natural resources, timber, minerals, and fisheries, colonization often took the form of taxation. From the 16th century, Sami families found themselves paying taxes to multiple kingdoms simultaneously, sometimes to Sweden, Norway, and Russia at once. This placed enormous strain on their communities, forcing them to hunt and herd, not only for survival, but also to meet the demands of foreign rulers. As settlements grew, Sami lands were gradually appropriated for farming, logging, and mining. Reindeer herding routes were disrupted and sacred sites destroyed. The expansion of nation-states meant that traditional mobility, moving freely across vast landscapes, became increasingly difficult as borders solidified. Assimilation policies. By the 19th and early 20th centuries, assimilation policies intensified. Governments viewed the Sami as backward and sought to integrate them into dominant national cultures. Schools were established where Sami children were forbidden to speak their native languages. Instead, they were taught in Norwegian, Swedish, Finnish, or Russian, depending on the region. These schools were part of a broader attempt to erase Sami identity. Children were often separated from their families for months at a time, cutting them off from their language, traditions, and knowledge of reindeer herding. My clothing, music, and rituals were discouraged. While Christian teachings were enforced, assimilation policies left lasting scars. Many Sami grew up ashamed of their heritage, pressured to hide their identity in order to succeed in broader society. Some even changed their names to avoid discrimination. Loss of land and resources. The Sami struggle was not only cultural, but also economic. Reindeer herding, fishing, and hunting required vast tracts of land. But as agriculture expanded and industrialization reached the north, Sami access to their traditional territories shrank. Large-scale logging stripped forests where reindeer grazed. Mining projects disrupted migration routes. Hydroelectric dams flooded valleys that had been central to Sami livelihoods for generations. In some regions, laws restricted Sami herding rights to those whose families had practiced it for centuries, excluding many from their ancestral practices. The pressures were immense. How could a small indigenous population preserve its way of life against the demands of expanding nation-states and industries? Resistance and survival. Despite these challenges, the Saami never disappeared. Throughout history, they resisted in both subtle and overt ways. Some continued practicing their traditions in secret, preserving language and rituals within families. Others adapted, blending elements of modern society with their heritage to ensure continuity. In the 20th century, political activism grew stronger. Saami intellectuals, artists, and leaders began to speak out against discrimination and demand recognition. The 1970s saw a turning point, particularly during the Alta conflict in Norway, 1979 to 1981. When Saami activists protested against the construction of a hydroelectric dam threatened to flood important reindeer grazing lands, the protests drew national and international attention, sparking greater awareness of Saami rights. Conclusion: the encounters between the Saami and outsiders tell a story of displacement, resistance, and survival. From trade relationships with Vikings to forced Christianization, from taxation under multiple kingdoms to assimilation in schools, the Saami have endured centuries of pressure aimed at erasing their identity, and yet they remain. Their language, traditions, and spirituality continue to survive, sometimes transformed, sometimes hidden, but always present. These struggles have not only shaped Saami history, but have also given them the strength to demand recognition in the modern era. The story of the Saami's encounters with outsiders is not one of defeat, but of endurance. A reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, indigenous cultures can find ways to survive, adapt, and reassert their place in the world. The Saami people are often described as Europe's last indigenous group, a community that has endured centuries of marginalization yet continues to exist with resilience and pride. But survival does not mean that the challenges of the past have disappeared. Instead, the Saami today live in a complex reality where tradition and modernity coexist, sometimes harmoniously, sometimes in conflict. To understand the Saami in the 21st century, one must look not only at their cultural revival, but also at the pressing issues they face. From land rights and climate change to language preservation and political recognition, the struggle for land and resources at the heart of many contemporary Saami challenges is the question of land rights. Reindeer, herding, fishing, and hunting, cornerstones of Saami tradition, all depend on access to vast areas of land. Yet much of this land has been seized or restricted by state governments for industries such as logging, mining, and hydroelectric power. For example, in northern Sweden, extensive mining operations threaten grazing lands. In Norway, hydroelectric dams continue to flood valleys once central to reindeer migration. In Finland, large-scale forestry projects disrupt ecosystems that Saami herders depend on. Each of these developments reduces the ability of Saami families to continue their traditional livelihoods. Legal battles over land use are ongoing. Saami activists argue that their ancestral connection to these territories should give them rights of stewardship and protection. However, state governments often prioritize economic growth and national interests over indigenous claims. This tension makes land disputes one of the most pressing issues for the Saami today. Climate change and environmental threats. If industrial development is one challenge, climate change is another, and it is particularly severe in the Arctic. Rising temperatures are altering migration routes for reindeer. It's causing unpredictable weather and shortening the snowy season. Traditionally, Saami herders relied on frozen lakes and consistent snow cover to guide their reindeer during winter migrations. But warmer winters now create dangerous ice conditions and layers of frozen crust that prevent reindeer from accessing lichen beneath the snow. The result is greater reindeer starvation and increased pressure on herders to find alternative strategies. The Saami, whose identity is deeply tied to the rhythms of the land, find themselves on the front lines of the global climate crisis. Their experiences serve as an early warning of what the world may face if environmental issues are not addressed. Language preservation. Language is more than a means of communication. It is a vessel of culture, memory, and identity. The Saami languages, of which there are at least 10 distinct varieties, have been under threat for centuries. Due to assimilation policies, Many Sami children were once forbidden from speaking their native tongues in schools, and generations grew up without fluency. Today, revitalization efforts are underway. Sami language schools, media outlets, and literature have been established across Sápmi. The internet and social media have also created new spaces for young Sami to learn and use their languages. Still, many dialects remain endangered, and without continued support, some risk disappearing within decades. The fight to preserve Sami languages is not only about communication, but also about cultural survival. Language contains unique ways of describing the environment, reindeer behavior, weather patterns, and spiritual beliefs, knowledge that cannot be fully translated into other tongues. Political representation and rights. One of the major achievements of recent decades has been the establishment of Sami parliaments in Norway in 1989, Sweden 1993, and Finland 1996. These institutions provide platforms for Sami political representation, enabling indigenous voices to influence decisions about language, culture, and land use. However, their authority is limited. Sami parliaments are advisory bodies rather than legislative powers, meaning their decisions can be overruled by national governments. This has led to frustration among Sami activists, who argue that true self-determination requires more than a symbolic recognition at the international level. The Sami have gained visibility through organizations such as the Sami Council, which advocates for indigenous rights across borders. Yet the ongoing challenge remains: how to ensure that recognition is not just ceremonial, but translates into tangible rights and protections. Cultural revival and global recognition. Despite these challenges, there has been a remarkable revival of Sami culture in recent decades. Joik music has found global audiences. Traditional clothing such as the gákti is worn proudly at festivals, and Sami art and literature are gaining international attention. Sami filmmakers, musicians, and writers are telling their own stories, challenging stereotypes that once reduced them to exotic curiosities. Events such as the Riku Festival in Norway celebrate indigenous culture, bringing together artists and activists from around the world. In many ways, the Sami have turned centuries of marginalization into a platform for resilience, reclaiming their voice and asserting their identity on the global stage. The ongoing struggles still the same: remain caught between worlds, one rooted in ancient traditions of herding, fishing, and storytelling, and another shaped by modern economies, technology, and globalization. Some Sami work in urban professions while still maintaining ties to reindeer herding families. Others focus on activism, education, or the arts as ways of preserving identity. The challenge is not whether the Sami can adapt; they have proven their adaptability for thousands of years, but whether they can do so on their own terms rather than being forced to conform to external pressures. Conclusion: the modern identity of the Sami people is defined by both resilience and struggle. They are a living culture, not relics of history, facing issues that resonate far beyond their own communities: environmental sustainability, indigenous rights, and the preservation of cultural diversity in a globalized world. Their story reminds us that survival is not just about enduring the past, but about shaping the future. As guardians of the northern landscapes, the Sami continue to teach that culture and nature are inseparable, and that protecting one means protecting the other. In their challenges lies a universal lesson: that the strength of humanity lies not in uniformity, but in the diversity of voices, traditions, and ways of life that enrich our shared existence. When speaking about the Sami, one must resist the temptation to see them as relics of the past. They are not a people frozen in time, existing only in folk costumes, reindeer herds, and ancient songs. Instead, they are a dynamic community whose story is still being written, a story that continues to evolve in dialogue with modernity, politics, and the environment. Looking ahead, the question is not whether the Sami will survive, but how their identity, culture, and traditions will adapt and thrive in the future. A generation rising across Sápmi. A new generation of Sami youth is reclaiming heritage in bold and innovative ways. These young people are equally at home on snowmobiles and smartphones, navigating the tension between global culture and indigenous roots. Many have grown up in cities yet return each summer to help with reindeer herding or participate in cultural festivals. This dual identity, once seen as a conflict, is increasingly celebrated. Being Sami today does not mean rejecting modern life, but redefining what it means to be indigenous in the 21st century. Through art, film, and social media, Sami voices are reaching global audiences in ways that previous generations could only dream of. Education and language revival. The survival of the Sami language family remains a crucial frontier, while revitalization. Programs have already made strides. The long-term future depends on education. In recent years, more schools in Norway, Sweden, and Finland have incorporated Sami language instruction. Bilingual education programs not only teach children their ancestral tongue, but also reinforce pride and identity. Digital tools, apps, online dictionaries, and interactive games are now being developed to help younger generations learn. This reflects a broader truth, that survival of culture in the digital age requires meeting the youth where they are, on platforms they already use. If successful, these efforts could ensure that Sami languages not only survive, but flourish. The environment as destiny few. People on Earth are as closely tied to the rhythms of nature as the Sami. Their future, therefore, is inseparable from the fate of the northern environment. Climate change, resource extraction, and industrial expansion all pose existential threats to Sami ways of life. But here lies both a challenge and an opportunity. Sami knowledge, centuries of ecological wisdom about reindeer behavior, weather patterns, and land management offers insights for sustainable living in a changing world. Increasingly, scientists and policymakers are turning to indigenous knowledge systems to complement modern science. If the Sami are given a seat at the table in climate discussions, they can shape solutions not only for their people, but for humanity. At large, in this sense, the Sami future is not just a local question, but a global responsibility. Political empowerment. The Sami parliaments in Norway, Sweden, and Finland represent milestones in indigenous recognition, but the path toward true political empowerment remains unfinished. Looking forward, Sami leaders continue to push for greater autonomy in managing land and resources. International frameworks such as the United Nations, Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples UNDRIP provide legal and moral leverage. Yet the real test will be whether nation-states honor these commitments in practice. The future of the Sami will depend heavily on whether their political institutions evolve from advisory bodies into true centers of decision-making power. Cultural innovation. The Sami future will not be shaped only by laws and policies, but also by creativity. Joik music is being fused with modern genres like electronic and rock, reaching audiences far beyond Scandinavia. Sami designers are incorporating traditional embroidery into contemporary fashion, while filmmakers bring Sami stories to global screens. This cultural innovation is not a dilution of tradition, but a testament to its vitality. Just as the Joik once evolved across generations, so too does Sami identity transform today. Far from vanishing, their culture is entering new spaces, adapting to new audiences, and asserting itself as both ancient and modern, a future of choice. Not survival. Perhaps the most important shift for the Sami is the transition from a narrative of survival to one of choice. For centuries, survival was the only option, as policies of assimilation and marginalization threatened to erase their culture. Today, however, Sami communities are increasingly in positions to decide their own paths, whether to focus on traditional livelihoods, pursue careers in modern industries, or blend both worlds. The true measure of the Sami future will be whether young people feel empowered to embrace their identity without fear of discrimination or loss. A culture is strongest not when it clings to the past, but when it provides its people with the confidence to face the future. Conclusion. A future written in many voices, the story of the Sami is still unfolding. It is a narrative marked by resilience, struggle, adaptation, and creativity. Looking ahead, The Saami will continue to face challenges, environmental, political, and cultural. Yet they do so not as victims, but as active participants, shaping their destiny. Their future is a reminder that Indigenous peoples are not fragments of history, but living communities whose wisdom is urgently needed in the modern world. Sami, the path forward will be written in many voices of herders and activists, musicians and storytellers, elders and youth. Together, these voices form a chorus that says, "We are still here. We will continue. Our future is our own too." Define.